Peace, peace, everybody. Peace and salute. I know I'm like hours late, but unfortunately, I fucking fell asleep. So I will be reading real fast that chapter. I just need a minute to get something to drink, and we will start this. So play a song or two, and then I will get started.
Shit, sometimes, man, I just get stressed out. I be like, damn, yo, I wanna go over here and just wanna smack a nigga up. You know what I'm saying? Crime syndicate shit, though. Niggas know us. You know what I'm saying? My piece put me on, for real. But, yo, shit's fucked up, yo. You know what I'm saying? Religion's all good, but where was heaven, yo? An ordinary cat from out of projects since I was younger though. Mom raised her children's pops dipped a long time ago. In my mind I see flashback. I had no fancy clothes. Skinny, ugly, naughty head nigga. Crying with snotty no. Even though my father neglect, he paid the child support. Hadn't seen him all these years. I hug his ass in court. Always said I'm coming to get you, and I'll be waiting too. Holiday and birthday presents was never coming through. Remember at the age 13, I started smoking weed, hanging out with cats that was older. Started to run the street, dropped out of high school, selling drugs, impressing chicks. Spent most my cheddar on gear. My mans was buying whips, New York, Jamaica, Miami niggas. Flooded Virginia quick, consigning work only if buying. Prices was high as shit. Remember when I first got hit, I seen the iron spit. 50 cats been in one corner bleeding with pellet hit. My man Sean, he held on strong. Slug burned through his lower backside, cracked his spine, exit his arm. Lost him twice on the hospital table. And when he died, I cried my eyes out. I couldn't take it. Damn. But the same things continue to happen. Niggas got bust. I'm a kid with a grown man's mind, turning corrupt, playing innocent. In front of my elders, I was running with them cats that be robbing too. I couldn't tell them. If my name was up in any tight trouble, my moms would tell me, just like your brothers, into some shit, go get a job or something. Just a little bum on the street, not working hard for nothing. Scratch I made whenever pumping. I hit her off with something, making sure the crib stay tight. For real, I won't no dummy. Send me where you getting this money. I watch a car be lying, saying anything size drug selling. My sister seen me on the block, transact with fiends, be saying I'ma tell it. Growing up was hell, no doubt. I wonder where was heaven. For real though, yo. Always look for that place called heaven. It's never there. I see my mans and them just get blasted on the block. You know what I'm saying? I go in the crib, I got stains all on my shirt. You know what I'm saying? And my mom's knew this type of shit I was going through because I was a project. Now I'm a grown man, still it's like life dealt me the wrong hand. Cats that was my man be frontin' or either found dead. It sounds sad, incarcerated, just turned a new dad. Remembering them long 10 months from slinging crack bags. Mom put me out with the quickness, carry your black ass, but still coming back to the crib. Oh, so you back, yeah. Ma, I just came to holler at you, see how you doing. Nothing's changed after all these years. Still hustle for some gear, smoke weed, still drink beers. I tell you from my heart, yo, times I'm like, yeah. If heaven was a place on this planet, you find me right there. Since a kid, though, all I wanted to roll with.
Tired of trials and tribulations, it seems like life is hell. Dreams the only way of escaping to worlds that's beyond imagination. I know a place I can take you there through elevation. Where I come from, young ones pump chunks for lump sums, busting guns. Trust none becomes son. Crews fell from loose shells that propel where I'm dwelling. Niggas jail telling what you selling. My nigga Tone just came home, went in for 5. The system tried to give him 5 more for getting high. Fly Stacy, daddy's little lady fucks crazily. Baby after baby lost her shape as of lately. Used to spend the quiet nights home. Now she likes to roam, feeling quite grown, caught in like cyclone. I was taught by the wise, applied the knowledge passed to advance, learn the science of life and earn a master's. Trapped in the havoc, I'm forced to go the whole. Although it might spell a jail cell and no parole, I fight with the force of Steve Austin until my arms can no longer hold off the coffin. In this ghetto heaven, God bless the children whose shattered dreams are often and hard to mend. We don't believe in heaven, we living in hell. Trying to escape a fate sealed in the bombshell. Feeling like Huey Newton with Panther plots. But high-tech surveillance got my moves on watch. So I drop jewels, use the music to educate. Can't celebrate till we elevate. Tired of trials and tribulations. It seems like life is hell. Dreams the only way of escaping to worlds that's beyond imagination. I know a place I can take you there through elevation.
Alright, serious fellas. Game face is on. 2 minutes or ETA. Synchronize your watches, let's go.
Yeah. Meth Lab 3. Let's go. Pick my city up from the giddy up, new yiddy up. Just like the Metro Transit, my city bus. Eat him up, since a young city buck. Been pretty plus sex in the city with pretty lady, yeah, pretty much. But all that pretty ain't really us. What's really up and what is trustworthy if you ain't worthy to really trust? This hook's to drop him, this uppercut is to lift him up. I pop and that's apparent, and I call his parents to pick him up. What's all this switching up, changing faces and nip tucks? You wanted all the juice, then you bitch up. This method I ain't changed since Big's what? I'm more like Heavy D, Mr. Big Stuff. Before they had injections for big butts, I'm big clutch. Pocket full of Giannis, that's big bucks. No capping to these rappers, I'm big bruh. Been trying to fight the power like Big Chuck. I'm trying to tell these cowards they get touched for trying to rush shies like Chris Tuck.
What if Big made it back to NY from Cali? What if Martin and Malcolm linked up for a rally? Damn. What if Pot Smoke and his folk didn't drop the Addy? Damn. Well, I guess we'll never know, so we still blowing the ratty. Go.
I said what I said, and I said what I mean. F that, period, bed, look like a crime scene. Too many red eye blights, I need some vibes in your queen. Got a pro meth habit, I call her Riley. She not a side thing like Coretta, she like king. And king run the palace, I'm not a savage, that's Viking. Striking, woods in my backpack, I'm high king. Spiking, these punches feel like I'm doing the right thing. This love and hip hop, but y'all just here for the fight scenes. Ice queens, whatever, I charge them extra for ice cream. Bong, no Cheech and Chong, just a bong, a nice dream. My time mean money like Audemars and Breitling. You pay the cost, but don't even know what the price mean. Go harder for the limelight, don't even know if the light green, red light, beam. This ain't hard as it might seem, but it's harder than rappers try and fit in them tight jeans.
Meth Lab,
It's the last 2 minutes.
you give us 2 minutes,
Don't at me.
and we'll give you the world, the world, the world, the world.
Alright, serious fellas. Game face is on. 2 minutes or ETA. Synchronize your watches, let's go.
Yeah. Meth Lab 3. Let's go.
All right. Let me get this. Oh, shit. That wasn't good. All right, bet. It would have been nice if I could edit a lot of this stuff out in the beginning, but let's get me get this set up correctly. And we're going to read about the chemical marriage from the book Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. The chemical marriage. The self-admitted author of the chemical marriage, Joanne Valentin Andre, born in Württemberg in 1586, was 28 years of age when that work was first published. It was presumably written about 12 years prior to its publication, or when the author was 15 or 16 years old. The fact is almost incredible that one was so young could produce a volume containing the wealth of symbolic thought and philosophy hidden between the lines of the chemical marriage. The book makes the earliest known reference to Christian Rosenkreuz and is generally regarded as the third of the series of original Rosicrucian manifestos. As a symbolic work, the book itself is hopelessly irreconcilable with the statements made by Andrea concerning it. The story of the chemical marriage relates in detail a series of incidents occurring to an aged man, presumably the father, CRC, of the Fama and Confessio. If Father CRC was born in 1378, as stated in the Confessio, and is identical with the Christian Rosicrucians of the chemical marriage, he was elevated to the dignity of Knight of the Golden Stone. I gotta research that, see what the Knight of the Golden Stone is. In the 81st year of his life in 1459. It's intriguing how people in them years back then seemed way more enlightened. In the light of his own statements, it is inconceivable that I think it might be Andrea, could have been Father Rosie Cross. Many figures found in the various books on symbolism, published in the early part of the 17th century, bear a striking resemblance to the characters and episodes in the chemical marriage. The chemical wedding may prove to be the key to the riddle of Baconian Rosicrucianism. The presence in the German text of the chemical marriage of the main episodes of the 7 days of the chemical marriage will give the reader a fairly comprehensive idea of the profundity of the symbolism. For the first day, Christian Rosenkreuz, having prepared in his heart the paschal lamb together with a small unleavened loaf, was distributed while at prayer one evening before Easter by a violent storm which threatened to demolish not only his little house, but the very hill on which it stood. In the midst of the tempest, he was touched on the back, and turning, he beheld a glorious woman with wings filled with eyes, and robed in sky-colored garments spangled with stars. In one hand she held a trumpet, and in the other a bundle of letters in every language. Handing a letter to CRC, she immediately ascended into the air, at the same time blowing upon her trumpet a blast which shook the house. Upon the seal of the letter was a curious cross and the words in hoc signo vinces. I don't know if it's hoc or it says in and then HOC, so that might be hoc. I don't know what hoc would mean. And then signo, which could mean a lot of things. Signal. Anyway, within, traced in letters of gold on an azure field, was an initiated to a royal wedding. CRC was deeply moved by the invitation because it was the fulfillment of a prophecy which he had received 7 years before. But so unworthy did he feel that he was paralyzed with fear. At length, after resorting to prayer, he sought sleep. In his dreams, he found himself in a loathsome dungeon with a multitude of other men, all bound and fettered with great chains. The grievousness of their suffering was increased as they stumbled over each other in the darkness. Suddenly, from above came the sound of trumpets. The cover of the dungeon was lifted. An ray of light pierced the gloom. Framed in the light stood a hoary-headed man who announced that a rope would be lowered 7 times and whoever could cling to the rope would be drawn up to freedom. Great confusion ensued. All sought to grasp the rope, and many were pulled away from it by others. CRC despaired of being saved, but suddenly the rope swung towards him, and grasping it, he was raised from the dungeon. An aged woman called the ancient matron wrote in a golden yellow book the names of those drawn forth, and each of the redeemed was given for remembrance a piece of gold, bearing the symbol of the sun and the letters DLSCRC, who had been injured while clinging to the rope, found it difficult to walk. The aged woman bade him not to worry, but to thank God who had permitted him to come into so high of a light. Thereupon trumpets sounded and CRC awoke, but so vivid was the dream that he was still sensible of the wounds received while asleep. That's happened to me before. With renewed faith, CRC arose and prepared himself for the hermetic marriage. He donned the white linen coat and bound a red ribbon crosswise over his shoulders. In his hat, he stuck 4 roses, and for food he carried bread, water, and salt. Before leaving his cottage, he knelt and vowed that whatever knowledge was revealed to him, he would devote to his service of his neighbor. He then departed from his house with joy. I thought this was going to be more or less about the alchemical or chemistry or something. But since I'm reading, I might as well keep going. Because I read day 7, and it didn't seem like it was this stuff. The second day, as he entered the forest surrounding his little house, it seemed to CRC that all nature has joyously prepared for the wedding. As he proceeded singing merrily, he came to a green heath in which stood 3 great cedars, one bearing a tablet with an inscription describing the 4 paths that led to the palace of the king. The first short and dangerous, the second circuitous, the third a pleasant and royal road, and the fourth suitable only for incorruptible bodies. Weary and perplexed, CRC decided to rest, and cutting a slice of bread, was about to partake thereof when a white dove begged him from behind. Begged it from him, the bread, when a white dove begged it from him. The dove was at once attacked by a raven. And in his efforts to separate the birds, CRC unknowingly ran a considerable distance along one of the 4 paths that leading southward, a terrific wind preventing him from retracing his steps. The wedding guest resigned himself to the loss of his bread and continued along the road until he espied in the distance a great gate. The sun being low, he hastened towards the portal, upon which among other figures was a tablet bearing the words Procule hens procule ite profani or profani. A gatekeeper in sky-colored habit immediately asked CRC for his letter of an invitation, and on receiving it, bade him enter and request that he purchased a token. After describing himself as a brother of the Red Rosy Cross, CRC received in exchange for his water bottle a golden disc bearing the letters SC. Night was drawing near. The wanderer hastened onto a second gate, guarded by a lion, into which was affixed a tablet with the words Date et Dabitor Volus, where he presented a letter given him by the first gatekeeper, being urged to purchase a token bearing the letters SM. He gave his little package of salt and then hastened on to reach the palace gates before they were locked for the night. A beautiful virgin called Virgo Lucifera. Sounds like Lucifer. Wait, that is. A beautiful virgin called Virgo Lucifera was extinguishing the castle lights as CRC approached, and he was barely able to squeeze through the closing gates. As they closed, they caught part of his coat, which he forced to leave behind. Here his name was written in the Lord Bridgegroom's little vellum book, and he was presented with a new pair of shoes and also a token bearing the letters SPN. He has then conducted by pages to a small chamber where the ice gray locks were cut off from the crown of the head by invisible barbers. What? After which he was ushered into a spacious hall where a goodly number of kings, princes, and commoners were assembled. At the sound of trumpets, each seated himself at the table, taking a position corresponding to his dignity, so that CRC received a very humble seat. Most of the pseudo-philosophers present being vain pretenders. The banquet became an orgy, which, however, suddenly ceased at the sound of stately and inspired music For nearly half an hour no one spoke. Then amidst a great sound, the door of the dining hall swung open, and thousands of lighted tapers held by invisible hands entered. These were followed These were followed by the two pages lighting the beautiful Virgo Lucifera seated on a self-moving throne. The white and gold-robed virgin then rose and announced that to prevent the admission of unworthy persons to the mystical wedding, the set of scales would be erected the following day, upon which guest would be weighed to determine his integrity. Those unwilling to undergo this ordeal, she stated, would remain in the dining hall. She then withdrew, but many of the tapers stayed to accompany the guests to their quarters for the night. Most of those present were presumptuous enough to believe that they could be safety weighed, but 9, including CRC, felt their shortcomings so deeply that they feared to outcome and remained in the hall, while others were led away to their sleeping chambers. These 9 were bound with ropes and left alone in the darkness. CRC then dreamed that he saw many men suspended over the earth by threads, and among them flew an aged man who, cutting here and there a thread, caused many to fall to earth. Those who in arrogance had soared to lofty heights accordingly fell a greater distance and sustained more serious injury than the more humble ones who, falling but a short distance, often landed without mishap. Considering this dream to be an omen, CRC related it to a companion, continuing discourse with him until dawn, the third day. Soon after dawn, the trumpet sounded, and the Virgo Lucifera, whatever, arrayed in red velvet, girded with white sash, and crowned with a laurel wreath, entered accompanied by 200 men in red and white livery. She intimated to CRC and his 8 companions that they might fare better than the other. Self-satisfied guests. Golden scales were then hung in the midst of the hall, and near them were placed 7 weights, 1 good-sized, 4 small, and 2 very large. The men in livery, each carrying a naked sword and a strong rope, were divided into 7 groups, and from each group was chosen a captain, who was given charge of one of the weights. Having remounted her high throne, Virgo Lucifera ordered the ceremony to begin. The first to step on the scales was an emperor so virtuous that the balances did not tip until 6 weights had been placed upon the opposite end. He was therefore turned over the 6th group. The rich and poor alike stood upon the scales, but only a few passed the test successfully. These 2 were given velvet robes and wreaths of laurel, after which they were seated upon the steps of Virgo Lucifera's throne. Those who failed were ridiculed and scourged. The Inquisition being finished, one of the captains begged Virgo Lucifera, or Farah, I gotta figure out which one it is, Virgo Lucifera, to permit the 9 men who had declared themselves unworthy also to be weighed, and this caused CRC anguish and fear. Of the first 7, one succeeded and was greeted with joy. CRC was the 8th, and he not only withstood all the weights, but even when 3 men hung on the opposite end of the beam, he could not be moved. A page cried out, "That is he, CRC," was quickly set at liberty and permitted to release one of the captives. He chose the first emperor, Virgo Lucifera, then requested the red roses that CRC carried, which he immediately gave her. The ceremony of the scales ended about 10 o'clock in the forenoon. What the hell is the forenoon? What about the 5 noon? Where am I? Great, I lost my spot. Gotta be kidding me. Oh, here we go. After agreeing upon the penalties to be imposed upon those whose shortcomings had been thus exposed, a dinner was served to all. The few successful artists, including CRC, were given the chief seats, after which the golden fleece and the flying lion were bestowed upon them in the name of bridegroom. Virgo Lucifer then presented a magnificent goblet to the guest, stating that the king had requested all to share its content. Following this, CRC and his companions were taken out upon a scaffolding, where they beheld the various penalties suffered by those who failed. Before leaving the palace, each of the rejected guests was given a draught of forgetfulness. The elect then returned to the castle, where to each was assigned a learned page, who conducted them through the various parts of the edifice. CRC saw many things his companions were not privileged to behold, including the royal sepulchre, sepulchre, or sepulchre, where he learned more than is extant in all books. He also visited a magnificent library and an observatory containing a great globe 30 feet in diameter, and with all the countries of the world marked upon it. Fake ass globe. At supper, the various guests propounded enigmas, and CRC solved the riddle, which Virgo Lucifer asked concerning his own identity, then entered the dining hall, 2 youths and 6 virgins beautifully robed, followed by a 7th virgin wearing a coronet or a coronet. The latter was called the Duchess and was mistaken for the Hermetic Bride. The Duchess told CRC that he had received more than the others, therefore should make a greater return. The Duchess then asked each of the virgins to pick up one of the 7 weights, which still remained in the great room. To Virgo Lucifera was given the heaviest weight, which was hung in the queen's chamber during the singing of a hymn. In the second chamber, the Virgin hung her weights during a similar ceremony. Thus they proceeded from room to room until all the weights had been disposed of. The Duchess then presented her hand to CRC and his companions, and followed by her virgins withdrew. Pages then conducted the guests to their sleeping chambers. The one assigned to CRC was hung with rare tapestries and with beautiful paintings. The fourth day. After washing and drinking in the garden from a fountain which bore several inscriptions, among them one reading, "Drink, brothers, and live," the guests, led by Virgo Lucifera, ascended the 365 steps of the royal winding stairs. The guests were given wreaths and laurel, and the curtain being raised, found themselves in the presence of the king and queen. CRC was awestruck by the glory of the throne. CRC was awestruck by the glory of the throne room, and especially by the magnificence of the queen's robes, which were so dazzling that he could not gaze upon them. Each guest was presented to the king by one of the virgins, and after the ceremony, the Virgo Lucifera made a short speech in which she recited the achievements of the honest artist and begged that each be questioned as to whether she had properly fulfilled her duty. Old Atlas then stepped forward and in the name of their royal majesties greeted the intrepid band of philosophers and assured Virgo Lucifera that she would receive a royal reward. The length of the throne room was 5 times its width. To the west was a great porch in which stood 3 thrones, the central one elevated. On each throne sat 2 persons. On the first, an ancient king with a young consort. On the third, a black king with a veiled matron beside him. And on a central throne, 2 young persons over whose heads hung a large and costly crown, about which hovered a little Cupid, who shot his arrows first at the 2 lovers and then about the hall. Before the queen, a book bound in black velvet lay on a smaller altar, on which were golden decorations. Besides this were a burning candle, a celestial globe, a small striking watch, a little crystal pipe from which ran a stream of clear, blood-red liquor, and a skull with a white serpent crawling in and out of the orbits. After their presentations, the guests retired down the winding stairs to a great hall. Later, the Virgo Lucifera announced that a comedy was to be performed for the benefit of the 6 royal guests in a building called the House of the Sun. CRC and his companions formed part of the royal procession, which after considerable walk arrived at a theater. The play was in 7 acts, and after it happy ending, all returned through the garden and up the winding stairs to the throne room. CRC noticed the young king was very sad, and that the banquet following, he often sent meat to the white serpent in the skull. The feast over, the young king, holding his hand the little black book from the altar, asking the guests if they would all be true to him through prosperity and adversity. And when they tremblingly agreed, he asked that he should sign his name in the little black book as proof of his fealty. The royal persons then drank from the little crystal fountain, the others afterwards doing likewise. This was called the Drought of Silence. The royal persons then sadly shook hands with all present. Suddenly a little bell tinkled, and immediately kings and queens took off their white garments and donned and donned black ones. The room was hung in sable draperies, and the tables were removed. The eyes of the royal persons were bound with 6 black taffeta scarves, and 6 coffins were placed in the center of the room. An executioner, a Moor, robed in black and bearing an axe, entered and beheaded in turn each of the 6 royal persons. The blood of each was caught in a golden goblet, which was placed in the coffins with the body. The executioner was also decapitated and his head placed in a small chest. The Virgo Lucifera, after assuring CRC and his companions that all should be well if they were faithful and true, ordered the pages to conduct them to their rooms for the night, while she remained to watch with the dead. About midnight, CRC awakened suddenly and, looking from his window, beheld 7 ships sailing upon a lake. Above each hovered a flame. These he believed to be the spirits of the beheaded. When the ships reached shore, the Virgo Lucifera hovered a flame. These he believed to be the spirit. Oh, okay. When the ships reached the shore, the Virgo Lucifera met them, and on each of the 6 vessels was placed a covered coffin. As soon as the coffins had been thus disposed of, the lights were extinguished, and the flames passed back over the lake, so that there remained but one light for a watch in each ship. After beholding this strange ceremony, CRC returned to his bed and slept till morning. The 5th day. Rising at daybreak and rising at daybreak and entreating his page to show him other treasures of the palace, CRC was conducted down many steps to a great iron door, bearing a curious inscription, which he carefully copied. Passing through, he found himself in the royal treasury, the light in which came entirely from some huge carbuncles. In the center stood the triangular sepulchre of Lady Venus. I gotta look that word to see if that's right. Lifting a copper door in the pavement, the page ushered CRC into a crypt where stood a great bed upon which, when his guide had raised the coverlets, CRC beheld the body of Venus, led by this page. CRC then rejoiced his companions, saying nothing to them of his experience. Virgo Lucifera, robed in black velvet and accompanied by her virgins, then led the guests out into the courtyard, where stood 6 coffins, each with 8 pallbearers. CRC was the only one of the group of artists who suspected royal bodies were no longer in the coffins. The coffins were lowered into graves, and great stones rolled over them. The Virgo Lucifera then made a short oration in which she exhorted each to assist in restoring the royal persons to life, declaring that they should journey with her to the Tower of Olympus, where the medicines necessary to the restoration of the 6 royal persons could alone be found. CRC and his companions followed Virgo Lucifera to the seashore, where all embarked on 7 ships disposed according to a certain strange order. As the ships sailed across the lake and through a narrow channel into the open sea, they were attended by sirens, nymphs, and sea goddesses, who in honor of the wedding presented a great and beautiful pearl to the royal couple. When the ships came in sight of the Tower of Olympus, Virgo Lucifera ordered the discharge of cannon to signal their approach. Immediately a white flag appeared upon the tower, and a small uh, gilded pinnace containing an ancient man, the warden of the tower, with his white-clad guards, came out to meet the ships. The Tower of Olympus stood upon an island, which was exactly square and was surrounded by a great wall. Entering the gate, the group was led into the bottom of the central tower, which contained an excellent laboratory where the guests were fain to beat and wash plants, precious stones, and all sorts of things, extract their juice and essence, and put these latter into glasses. Virgo Lucifera set the artists to work so artistly that they felt they were mere drudges. When the day's work was finished, each was assigned a mattress on the floor. Being unable to sleep, CRC wandered about, contemplating the stars. Chancing upon a flight of steps leading to the top of the wall, he climbed up and looked out upon the sea. Remaining here for some time, about midnight, he beheld 7 flames, which passing over the sea towards him, gathered themselves at the top of the spire of the central tower. Simultaneously the winds arose, the sea became tem- tem- wow, tempestuous. It's a crazy word. Tempestuous? I don't know. And the moon was covered with clouds. With some fear, CRC ran down the stairs and returned to the tower, and lying down on his mattress, was lulled to sleep by the sound of gently flowing fountain in the laboratory. The 6th day. The next morning, the aged warden of the tower, after examining the work performed by the wedding guest in the laboratory and finding it satisfactory, caused ladders, ropes, and large wings to be brought forth, and addressed the assembled artists thus: My dear sons, one of these 3 things must each of you this day constantly bear about with him. Lots were cast into CRC, much to his chagrin, fell a heavy ladder. Those who secured wings had them fastened to their backs so cunningly that it was impossible to detect that they were artificial. The aged warden then locked the artist in the lower room of the tower, but in a short time a round hole was uncovered in the ceiling, and Virgo Lucifer invited all to ascend. Those with wings flew at once through the opening. Those with ropes had many difficulties, while CRC with the ladder made reasonable speed. On the 2nd floor, the wedding guests, musicians, and Virgo Lucifer gathered about a fountain-like contrivance containing the bodies of the 6 royal persons. Virgo Lucifera then placed the Ifmore's head in a kettle-like receptacle in the upper part of the fountain and poured upon it the substance prepared on the previous day in the laboratory. The virgins placed lamps beneath these upon it the substance prepared. These substances then, when they boiled, passed out through the holes in the sides of the kettle, and falling upon the bodies in the fountain below, dissolved them. The 6 royal bodies having been reduced thus to a liquid state, a tap was opened in the lower end of the fountain, and the fluid drained into an immense golden globe, which then filled with a great weight. All but the wedding guests then retired, and shortly a hole in the ceiling opened, as before, and the guests ascended. Pell-mell. I think that's the word. Pell-mell. Never heard of that word. Pell-mell or Pell-mell? I don't know. To the third floor. Here the globe was suspended by a strong chain. The walls of the apartment were of glass, and mirrors were so arranged that the sun's rays were concentrated upon the central globe, thus causing it to become very hot. Later the sun rays were deflected and the globe permitted to cool, after which it was cut open with a diamond, revealing a beautiful white egg. Carrying this with her, Virgo Lucifer departed. The guests, having ascended through another trap door, found themselves upon the fourth floor, where stood a square kettle filled with silver sand, warmed by a gentle fire. The great white egg was placed upon the warm sand to mature. In a short time it cracked, and there emerged an ugly, ill-tempered bird, which was fed with the blood of the beheaded royal persons, diluted with prepared water. At each feeding, its feathers changed color. From black they turned to white, and at last they became very colored, the disposition of the bird improving the while. Dinner was then served, after which Virgo Lucifer departed with the bird. The guests ascended with ropes, ladders, and wings to the fifth floor, where a bath colored with fine white powder had been prepared for the bird, which enjoyed bathing in it until the lamps placed beneath the bath caused the water to become uncomfortably warm. When the heat had removed all the bird's feathers, it was taken out, but the fire continued until nothing remained in the bath save a sediment in the form of a blue stone. This was later pounded upon and made into a pigment. With this, all of the bird except the head was painted. The guests thereupon ascended to the sixth floor, where stood a small altar resembling that in the king's throne room. The bird drank from the little fountain and was fed with the blood of the white serpent which crawled through the opening in the skull. The sphere by the altar revolved continuously. The watch struck 1, 2, and then 3, at which time the bird, laying its neck upon the book, suffered itself to be decapitated. Damn. His body was burned to ashes, which were placed in a box of cypress wood. Virgo Lucifera told CRC and 3 of his comrades that they were lazy and sluggish laborators and would therefore be exalted from the 7th room. Musicians were sent for, who with cornets were to blow the 4 in ridicule from the chamber. CRC and his 3 companions were disheartened until the musicians told them to be of good cheer and led them up a winding stair to the 8th floor of the tower directly beneath the roof. Here the old warden, standing upon a little round furnace, welcomed them and congratulated them upon being chosen by Virgo Lucifera for the greater work. Virgo Lucifera then entered, and after laughing at the perplexity of her guest, emptied the ashes of the bird into another vessel, filling the cypress box with useless matter. She thereupon returned to the 7th floor, presumably to mislead those who assembled there by setting to the work upon the false ashes in the box. CRC and his 3 friends were set to work moistening the bird's ashes with specially prepared water until the mixture became a dough-like consistency, after which it was heated and molded into two miniature forms. Later these were opened, disclosing two bright and almost transparent human images, about 4 inches high, hominsuli, one male and the other female. These tiny forms were laid upon satin cushions, and fed drop by drop with the blood of the bird until they grew to normal size and of great beauty. Though the bodies had the consistency of flesh, they showed no signs of life, for the soul was not in them. The bodies were next surrounded with torches, and their faces covered with silk. Virgo Lucifera then appeared, bearing two curious white garments. The virgins also entered, among them 6 bearing great trumpets. A trumpet was placed upon the mouth of one of the two figures, and CRC saw a tiny hole open in the dome of the tower, and a ray of light descended through the tube of the trumpet and entered the body. This process was repeated 3 times on each body. The two newly ensouled forms were then removed upon a traveling couch. In about half an hour, the young king and queen awakened, and Virgo Lucifera presented them with the white garments. These they donned, and the king in his own person most graciously returned, thanks to CRC and his companions. After which the royal persons departed upon a ship. CRC and his 3 privileged friends then rejoined the other artists, making no mention of what they had seen. Later, the entire party were assigned handsome chambers, where they rested till morning, the 7th day. In the morning, Virgo Lucifera announced that each of the wedding guests had become a knight of the golden stone. The age warden then presented each man with a gold medal, bearing on one side the inscription at Nat and me, or MI, which is probably, yeah, me. And on the other side, it said Tem F. The entire company returned in 12 ships to the king's palace. The flags on the vessels bore the signs of the zodiac, and CRC sat under that of Libra. As they entered the lake, many ships met them, and the king and queen, together with the lords, ladies, and virgins, rode forth on a golden barge to the great returning guest. Atlas then made a short oration in the king's behalf, also asking for the royal presence. In reply, the age warden delivered to Cupid, who hovered about the royal pair, a small, curious-shaped casket. CRC and the old lord, each bearing a snow-white ensign with the red cross on it, rode in the carriage with the king. At the first gate stood the porter with blue clothes, who, upon seeing CRC, begged him to intercede with the king to release him from the post of servitude. The king replied that the porter was a famous astrologer who was forced to keep the gate as a punishment for the crime of having gazed upon Lady Venus reposing upon her couch, or her cooch. That's what it looks like, cooch. The king further declared that the porter could be released only when another was found who had committed the same crime. Upon hearing this, CRC heart sank, for he realized himself to be the culprit, but he remained silent at the time. The newly created Knights of the Golden Stone were obliged to subscribe to 5 articles drawn upon His Royal Highness. 1. that they would ascribe their order only to God and his handmade nature. 2, that they should abominate all unclean clean uncleanliness and vice. 3, that they should always be ready to assist the worthy and needy. 4, that they should not use their knowledge and power for the attainment of worldly dignity. 5, that they should not desire to live longer than God had decreed. They were then duly installed as knights, which ceremony was ratified in the little chapel, where CRC hung up his golden fleece and his hat for an eternal memorial. And here he inscribed the following: Summa scientia nihil scire fr Christianus Rosencreutz equas aurori lapidus anno 1459. After the ceremony, CRC admitted that he was the one who had beheld Venus and consequently must become the porter of the gate. The king embraced him fondly, and he was assigned to the great room containing 3 beds, one for himself, and one for aged lord of the tower, and the third for old Atlas. The chemical marriage here comes to an abrupt end, leaving the impression that CRC was to assume his duties as porter on the following morning. The book ends in the middle of a sentence with a note in italics, presumably by the editor. Under the symbolism of an alchemical marriage, medieval philosophers concealed the secret system of spiritual culture, whereby they hoped to coordinate the disjecta membra of both the human and social organisms. Society, they maintained, was a threefold structure and had an analogy in the triune constitution of man. For as man consists of spirit, mind, and body, so society is made up of the church, the state, and the populace. The bigotry of the church, the tyranny of the state, and the fury of the mob are the 3 murderous agencies of society which seek to destroy truth, as recounted in the Masonic legend of Haram Abith. The first 6 days of the chemical marriage set forth the process of philosophical creation through which every organism must pass. The 3 kings are the threefold spirit of man, and their consorts the corresponding vehicles of their expression in lower world. The executioner is the mind, the higher part of which, symbolized by the head, is necessary to the achievement of the philosophical labor. Thus, the parts of man, by the alchemist, symbolized as planets and elements, when blended together according to a certain divine formula, result in the creation of 2 philosophic babes which, fed upon the blood of the alchemical bird, becomes ruler of this world. From an ethical standpoint, the young king and queen, resurrected at the summit of the tower and ensouled by divine life, represents the forces of intelligence and love, which must ultimately guide society. Intelligence and love are the 2 great ethical luminaries of the world, and correspond to enlightened spirit and regenerated body. The bridegroom is reality, and the bride the regenerated being who attains perfection by becoming one with reality through a cosmic marriage, wherein the mortal part attains immortality by being united with its own immoral source. In the Hermetic marriage, divine and human consciousness are united in holy wedlock, and he in whom the sacred ceremony takes place is designated as Knight of the Golden Stone. He thereby becomes a divine philosophic diamond composed of the quintessence of his own sevenfold constitution. Such in the true interpretation of the mystical process of becoming a bride of the Lamb. The Lamb of God is signified by the golden fleece that Jason was forced to win before he could assume his kingship. The flying lion is illuminated will, an absolute prerequisite to the achievement of the great work. The episode of weighing the souls of men has its parallel in the ceremony described in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. The walled city entered by CRC represents the sanctuary of wisdom, wherein dwell the real rulers of the world, the initiated philosophers. Like the ancient mysteries, after which was patterned the Order of the Rose Cross, possessed a secret ritual which was lived by the candidate for a prescribed number of years before he was eligible to the inner degrees of the society. The various floors of the Tower of Olympus represent the orbit of the planets, or the winding stairs. The ascent of the philosophers from one floor to another also parallels certain rituals of the Eleusinian mysteries and the rites of the Mithras, wherein the candidate ascended the 7 rungs of the ladder, or climbed the 7 steps of the pyramid, in order to signify release from the influences of the planetary governs. Man becomes master of the 7 spheres only when he transmutes the impulses received from them. He who masters the 7 worlds and is reunited with the divine source of his own nature consummates the Hermetic marriage. So that's that. Next time I'm going to read the cryptogram as a factor in symbolic philosophy. Or maybe I'll read something different, damn it. So I might do Freemasonic symbolism actually next time. But I thought this would be something different when I started reading it. But yeah, that was that. And nobody came through, which is kind of good because that was actually, in my eyes, the ending was awesome. But I just didn't like how the story, the ending is what really, I thought it was like a true story. But like a lot of these books and stories that you see at the end, it's like a code, or it's like, how could I put it? It's more or less, it synchronizes these characters really, like it reminds me of like the Bible. It's very symbolic. Each character aligns with something. Like the flying lion was more than just a flying lion. It symbolized something. And that's at the end is when I said, it was worth reading because of the end. I thought it was just some corny story of CRC getting into a secret society, man, but it was more than that. But by the title, that's why they say don't judge a book by the title, because the title of it all, I thought it was something completely different. When I started reading it, it led me down a whole other path. But yeah, man, thanks for listening, everybody. If you enjoy these readings, let me know in the comments what you think, man. This is the book of all ages. I mean, the Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. And he has a couple other books I'm gonna get, but it only took an hour and 10 minutes to read that. it just, if you could see what it looks like, it's 5 pages, but they're big, long pages of little writing. So, but salute to everybody, man. Until next time, keep pushing forward, stay shining, stay healthy. I'm out of here.